Hey guys, and welcome to the first episode of Something Old, Something New, where we take older games, newer games, and pit them against each other to see which ones can come out on top. In today's episode, we're doing the PS1 original Metroidvania classic, Castlevania Symphony of the Night, versus Igarashi's kickstarted spiritual successor, Bloodstained Ritual of the Night. Let's get it. Man, Castlevania Symphony of the Night, known by many gamers as one of the best PS1 games of all time. It's also the first game of the series to spawn the title Metroidvania because it combines the backtracking and item-based progression of a Metroid game with the unique universal monster-style world of Castlevania. Note some of the names I have here, besides Wolf, of course, especially the weird one that starts with the X. That thing gives you 99 luck, which makes the game crazy interesting. Anyway, our journey starts us off with our boy Richter, who in Dracula's eyes is a
miserable little pile of secrets.
And he's here to wipe out old Dracul. Hey, by the way, pro tip? Make sure you open up old Uncle Fengi's naked puzzle attic and grab all sorts of dope weapons you can't use because Whippy Boy's got a whip. I mean, look at some of this cool stuff. The moon rod, the firebrand, and here we are, with a chain? After you've prepped for battle, it's time to face the old philosopher himself. Make sure you destroy all of his beautiful furniture on the way to his stupid throne room since his lazy ass couldn't even be bothered to get up to greet you. And so begins our final battle, whipping old man in the face who really just wants to show you what he's hiding under that damn cloak. But little does he know you're packing the power of Jesus Christ himself. But wait, what's this? He was a dinosaur all along. Too bad, like all things, dinosaurs are no match for Jesus Christ himself. And next thing you know, boom, that fool got fatal frame. Castlevania Symphony of the Night, known by many gamers as one of the best PS1 games of all time. It's also the first game in the series to spawn the... Wait. Didn't I already do this? There's my boy, Enter Alucard, a half-vampire, half-human son of Dracula, who's not only the world record-holding 100-meter dash gold medalist, but he also holds the silver in the long jump. He's on his way to see what the hell is up with old P-Pop's castle still, existing. And so his journey of violence towards classic movie monsters commences. And then, coming in with some of the coolest sprite animation I've ever seen, Death, who's apparently a good friend of the Count, takes all of your gear to inhibit your journey, essentially putting you back at square one and starting this quest. And quite the quest you're gonna have. You'll battle your way all the way back to the throne room through all the classic locations we've come to know and love from Castlevanias of the past. Laboratories, the bridges, and of course the infamous clock tower. That thing still overflows with Medusa heads and spinning gear platforms. You'll continue this journey all while fighting bosses, gaining key items, and learning abilities that drive your progress ever forward. All of these abilities are used in some capacity to push you through the mini puzzles of the castle. The fog, for instance, makes you invincible. It also lets you slip through iron bars and basically fade through enemies. The only issue is it drains your magic very fast. The bat gives you the ability to fly, making out-of-reach areas accessible. It also consumes much less magic, letting you make use of its air dash and mobility for much longer than the fog. Abilities also have upgrades, like how the fog can turn into a volatile cloud of urine that melts away any unfortunate soul who drifts into your mist. While you're using the bat familiar, you can actually get a team of little bat homies that rock shop with you. When one shoots a fireball, they all shoot the fireball. I definitely saved my favorite for last. The wolf transformation has the ability for high-speed dash that when paired up with timed jumps, can really clear some distance in the castle. And after some unexpected Belmont shenanigans, you end up going to what's known as the inverted castle. If you like the first one, you're gonna love this one. Second verse, same as the first, only upside down, and with tougher bosses and enemies. How do you combat such a stern batch of foes? Well, if you've had RNG on your side by now, you're probably decked out with some of the dopest weapons an action platformer has ever seen. And by dope, I mean, let's check some of these bad boys out. Man, check this joker out. It's the Heaven Sword. It's kind of like that yo-yo ball from the 90s, only highly more bladed. What's more, if you have two of them, you can summon a wall of these things to utterly shred your enemies to nothing. Say you're sick of fighting the big bads on your own. Well, you can just use the two-handed Sword of Dawn. Using the Hadoken motion from Street Fighter, you can summon your own army of the dead, consisting of knights, wizards, clerics, archers, and whatever the hell else you can think of to take care of those problems for you. There are also combo weapons, my favorite being the Skull Shield and Shield Rod combo, which make a huge undead laser weapons platform that can melt bosses. Another badass weapon are the fists that let you do a 100 punch and a Hadoken, depending on the button combinations. With the fist, you could... With the fist, you could... If you get all the... You can... Come on! Jesus Christ! With the fist, you... Oh my god. Damn it. Fine. Pippin, you're up. Yeah, and so there's the Chrysogrim. That flash of blades you're seeing right now is hands down the most broken weapon in this game. It hits everything hundreds of times, obliterating your foes instantly. Oh, bosses? Yeah, don't make me laugh. Here's Shaft, the second to the last boss. And yeah, less than 3 seconds. Oh, and how about Dracula, final boss of the game? Yeah, another joke. If Dracula didn't want to get throttled so hard, he shouldn't have trusted the Chrysogrim to a ghost named Shmoo. And with that vulgar display of violence past us, we get to meet up with Maria and old Ricky Boy to celebrate the disappearance of that castle once again. Dad's dead, the day is saved, and peace can once again bless Europe until someone else resurrects Dracula. Before I start talking about Bloodstained, I want to talk about something that is a personal preference of mine. When it comes to platforming, just video games in general, my tiers of the graphics that I go for is I prefer sprite-based games, of course, number one, top tier. Past that, kind of hand-drawn games, kind of like how Arc System does with BlazBlue, or some of their other more hand-drawn games. And past that would be cell shading, Jet Set Radio Future, Dragon Ball Fighter Z, games of that nature. And the lowest for me would be like the polygon models. I'm not saying I dislike polygon models or anything, but just that's kind of where I'm at. Sprites, hand-drawn, cel-shaded polygon models, and I guess like vector graphics. Anyway, I'm only saying that to lead into the first point about Bloodstained, which is when I first put on Bloodstained and saw the 3D models over the sprites of Castlevania. I guess disappointed wouldn't be the word, because that's kind of where we're at now. But at first I was like, whew, this is kind of a little ugly. But it grew on me. It definitely grew on me. And I'll show you why there's a lot of advantages to it. When you first start up Bloodstained, you find yourself realizing that this game is going to have a lot to live up to. Being a crowdfunded game that was born purely of nostalgia, it has to hit a lot of notes while still being different enough to be its own game. And this is what I was talking about earlier. Straight out the gate, I thought this game was ugly as sin. I mean, wrecked up boat, knockoff Tentacruel looking enemies. Like I said before, I'm personally a sprite guy, so when I saw this, a little disappointed. But then we get to the first boss, and I'm gonna be honest, I actually had to heal up mid-fight with this thing, which is not something I normally have to do in games like this, especially on the first boss. But this is where the depth really starts kind of kicking in. Upon beating the boss, you gain a shard. Granted, you've probably gotten a few from the enemies on the boat so far, depending on your luck. But this one's more powerful, kind of a more, stronger ability. At this point, you kind of make the realization that, well, every enemy in the game drops an ability. Now, for someone a little OCD like me, this is a blessing and a curse. On the one hand, I have to have all the shards, so I end up grinding. The blessing part being that you get dope abilities, weapons. I mean, this game has a lot to offer. It's freaking sweet. The cursed part is the fact that since you are grinding, inevitably you level up too much, and pretty much later in the game I blew past enemies like they were nothing. Back to the graphics. Here's that advantage I was talking about earlier, the character customization. Throughout the castle you can get items and unlockables that can give you many different ways to change how you look. Another cool thing is the different weapons, helmets, cloaks, armors. A lot of these give you a visual difference as well. Another awesome thing about this game is how they tied the weapon abilities to specific weapons like Symphony of the Night. However, once you master the ability, you can use the technique with any weapon of the same type. Now for one of the best features they added hands down, crafting. You can craft abilities, level up your shards, and yeah, create weapons and armor based on the drops you get throughout your adventure. Of course, all the best stuff in the game comes from this process. Speaking of weapons, let's just get down to it. There are a ton. First off, you could dash in all Don Quixote style with this crazy Lu Bu style spear. And it very well would not be a Castlevania knockoff if you didn't have a whip of some kind. And check this out, with the abilities you can transfer from weapon to weapon, like I said earlier, you can basically cast this tornado with any whip you choose. Of course, you can't neglect the rapier either, get that Devil May Cry style 1000 stab. Works really well on the small fry, but bigger enemies, the range is just much too short. Some bosses also drop crazy specific weapons, like this umbrella blood sword thing. The next few weapons are straight up Symphony of the Night bootlegs. Starting off with the the bandit sword. Yeah, that teleport slash looks pretty damn familiar. Then we have the Flying Edge, which is exactly like the Heaven Sword. Once again, it's one of the better weapons of the game, just it'd be cool if they put a newer spin on it. Yeah. These. You can't call yourself the Symphony of the Night spiritual successor without your very own Chrysogrim. I'm glad to see that it's front and center and still highly broken. Oh, don't worry. I'll demonstrate this in detail just a little bit. But first I want to talk about some of the cool locations you see here in the castle. You really get a wide range of areas in this one. You start out in a mostly destroyed village, much like the one in Rondo of Blood. You visit ancient Japanese castles, laboratories, underground volcanoes, deserts, all these weird places, even a clock tower knockoff. One of the coolest things though is in the library where you get to meet an old friend. Yeah, you ain't fooling anybody with that there mustache, Alucard. Like in Symphony of the Night, you do gain abilities from bosses that help you progress through the castle. Take this one for instance. It's like a speed of light thunder god teleport technique. Stuff like this is what really varies the gameplay a lot. We can't mention cool places to explore in the castle without mentioning the 8-bit Nightmare. It's a full-on Castlevania 1 style mini-dungeon where you get to fight NES style enemies with all of your 3D rendered power. And before you ask, yeah, even these enemies drop abilities for you to use. I promised you broken Chrysogrim style gameplay, you're getting broken Chrysogrim style gameplay. This is the boss rush. And as you can see, these bosses go down in literally seconds. When you combine the Chrysogrim knockoff with the ability to summon a circle of big spender Kickstarter patrons, you end up unleashing a devastating flurry of attacks that nothing can stand up to. I'm just gonna cut these fights together real fast so you can see how it just wrecks shop. Anywho, like Symphony of the Night, through some twists and turns, you find yourself having to fight some ungodly massive beast in the dead bottom of the castle. At this point, you're so OP that whatever the hell this thing is doesn't even get a second thought. And like Symphony of the Night, once the day is saved, your boy Joey Alchemist chimes in with the, "Oh yeah, I set bombs all over this piece." And then he proceeds to nuke the castle so no more demons can get through. Once again, a happy ending for everyone. Well, except for the village that was destroyed. And all of your friends that die. But we mostly good. So I definitely picked a hard one to start out with. I was thinking when I started this something old, something new, it'd be like, oh yeah, I definitely got a clear shot in my mind. Especially with this episode. I was so sure that Castlevania Symphony of the Night was going to be my go-to choice. But after playing through both games all the way, I'm going to have to give it to Bloodstained Ritual of the Night. The reason for this is since Castlevania Symphony of the Night, they've made so many more Metroidvania games that they've made plenty of progress in the genre. And Bloodstained had the advantage of stealing all those great ideas and making one comprehensive, perfect spiritual successor. So, like I said, for this one, gonna have to give it to Bloodstained. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Something Old, Something New. This time we're gonna be comparing EDF 2017 and EDF 2025. Let's get it. Now, before you guys start going crazy, I know 2025 isn't the newest one, trust me. It was a pain in the ass to import these guys. Plus, I also know there's the Super Nintendo Earth Defense Force that has nothing to do with it, and the one we do not want to talk about. First things first, though, I would like to share a theory and a story behind my theory. Nowadays, a lot of people have seen or heard of EDF, but I have a theory that it takes one person in every group of friends to get that game going. It's not a game that people just picked up and played just for the sake of it off the shelf. There's always a weird story behind how did you play EDF the first time? And, well, mine's no exception. Now let me set the stage for you. Friday afternoon, 2005. Hanging out at my buddy B-Ran's house. We've been farming Dust Devils all day, trying to get that D-chain on the scape. Starting to get hungry. B-Ran's dad rolls in, sack of Arby's. What's in the bag? Crispy strips? Seasoned curlies. What's more, this man is a genius. This guy goes out of his way to get some Coke. Now we all know that Coke products aren't served at Arby's, so this guy made a second trip to ensure the ultimate feast on this Friday night. Boom, eat the meal, full as ticks, sweet barbecue sauce, delicious time. B-Ran's dad comes back in. Hey, do you boys want to go to Blockbuster? Rent some games. We live to each other. Boom. Boom, of course we do. Stupid question. Now we're at Blockbuster, perusing the shelves. What's new? What's the hot game to play? What's something we can both play at the same time? Mind you, we've been scaping all day, taking turns. Then we see this. EDF 2017. We don't know anything about this game. But you flip the box over, giant robots, giant ants, mech suits, 53 levels. But the big kicker here, co-op 2. We didn't know what we were getting into. Boy, did we get into it. So when it comes to Earth Defense Force, there are two kinds of people. There are people who have played this game and absolutely love and adore the series. And there's people who straight up haven't played this game. That is the only two options. I'm telling you, these games are nothing but just balls to the wall couch co-op fun. With every title in the series, you're pretty much kind of doing the same thing. The aliens, or the Ravengers as you call them, have come down from space, and you are basically tasked to wipe them out with the EDF, the Earth Defense Force. Now you do this with a whole lot of crazy weapons at your arsenal, and it's one of those kind of games where there's multiple difficulties, and the higher the difficulty and the higher the level you're playing on, the crazier the weapons you're going to get, and that basically forms this very fun loop of kill stuff, get crazy weapons, kill more stuff, get crazier weapons. But unlike games like, you know, those kind of like Diablo or something, where all you're really seeing is like bigger numbers, these weapons are insane, and they just get crazier and crazier. Of course, when you're playing this game and you're unlocking these crazy weapons, you definitely want to test them out. Luckily, both games, and every game in the series so far, has had a certain level that's perfect for this. In EDF 2017, that level is Crimson, nothing but red ants that cannot do any ranged attacks, melee only, so you just get waves of giant red ants coming at you, and you can test out your weapons. First things first, we definitely have your classic assault rifle and your shotgun. You can't go wrong with these weapons. I mean, basically spray into the crowd, blow them away. Cool thing to note about this game, with the exception of certain weapons that are made with quote-unquote Ravager technology, all of the weapons actually have unlimited ammo. You're only kind of inhibited by your reload time, which is really crucial in planning your moves. Of course, you cannot go wrong with your classic sniper rifle. In fact, in this scene right here, I'm actually using a sniper rifle called the 5 card. It's one of the later ones in the game. In fact, a lot of these weapons are going to be later weapons in the game. But the 5 card really stood out to me because it's basically a sniper shotgun. You shoot 5 rounds at once. I mean, it decimates bosses with large life bars. And of course, to pair along with your sniper rifle, we have the standard rocket launcher, kind of a dummy missile if you will. Fire straight, big explosion, big radius of damage, but no tracking capabilities on this. Once again, multiple versions of this in the game. Some are more rapid fire, low damage. Some are one big shot, huge explosion. Kind of take your pick. Then of course you have the more lock-on capable rockets, and that would be the missile launcher class weapons. Now, the one I'm showing right now is one of my absolute favorites. It's called the Prominence. There's of course many different versions, but the thing that's cool about the Prominence is you fire it and it doesn't actually lock on until about 10 seconds later. So basically the goal of the Prominence is to shoot it straight in the air, kind of fire and forget, switch to a different weapon or do whatever, and then watch it come rain down like seconds later after you forgot about it, and then just blow everything up in a huge blast radius. Along with the missile launchers that shoot one huge missile that kind of tracks out your enemies, you also have something more like this, the Fork 20, which launches 20 missiles that kind of launch like, think Independence Day, and they all converge on one target. Very cool for bosses, and also very good for situations like this where you have a wide wave of enemies. Then you get into the more specialty weapons. Now this is a combination I personally adore. They have gun turrets in this game. Some of my favorite being these Zexer turrets. They're basically like fully auto machine guns. But then they also have a bunch of different grenade options, my favorite being the Stampede. As you can see, the Stampede launches a shotgun of grenades that just wreak havoc into any wave of enemies. And then you wrap up the stragglers with the Zexer guns, you got a pretty potent combination. Now, something like this works really well in an open area, but cities not so much. But they have other things to take care of those problems as well. Welcome in the bomb class weapons. So these weapons activate basically with a secondary trigger. They have claymore type mines and just regular explosives. And as you can see here, it's great to set a lineup. Works really well in cities in between buildings. And wait for the ants to come to you. Then you just press your little shoulder button and blow them all away. I mean, look, I can go on and on about the weapons in this game, but I have to obviously talk about one final thing, and that is the genocide gun. This is back in the day, for some of you people who may be younger, back in the day, games used to actually reward you for beating them rather than reward you for swiping a credit card. And in this game, if you can beat the hardest difficulty, you unlock the genocide gun. It basically counts as a rocket launcher, but it is a 1,000-meter explosion radius laser nuke, I guess, to lack of a better word. As you can see here, it utterly decimates anything and basically makes you the default king of the game. Now this game has a swath of enemies. It starts out simple enough, just ants, black ants that shoot acid, red ants that bite you. But as the game progresses, you get more and more stuff going on. So as you can see here, giant spiders. Now these are a lot squishier than the ants, easier to kill as far as damage, but they are way harder on you. They shoot these acidic webs that stick to everything. Also, you'll see there's ships later on, crazy drop ships that drop ants, that drop spiders, and eventually drop mechanized robots. Exactly. You have these crazy robots that are all outfitted with different arms, different cannons, different weapons, and I mean, they really kind of keep making more and more of this. You kind of find out that maybe it's not the ants or the spiders, it's actually these alien robots. It's real kind of vague, but really fun. I mean, the whole point of this is just to kind of sit through with your friends and blast stuff. But then, of course, the final challenge is basically the mothership. We have to destroy all the weak points while it's launching little ships at you, and ants and spiders and etc, etc, etc. I mean, this game really has a wide variety of enemies, and it even actually has a couple of pretty cool bosses in it. Along with giant versions of the insects, there are some cool bosses in this game, basically in the form of like a kaiju Godzilla-style monster. This thing is gigantic, has massive claws, fire breath, and then, on top of that, he actually comes back later on. After you kill him, he's been rebuilt by the aliens, and his arms are replaced by gigantic laser cannons. I mean, This game, like I said, is nuts. It's very fun, very cool game to throw down with your friends. Drop it in on a Saturday, Saturday night, couch co-op. Just a really solid, fun time. So after experiencing the masterpiece that was EDF 2017, then this hunk of junk comes out. Earth Defense Force Insect Armageddon. Granted, this game was not made by the original people, and it did have one cool thing they added was the class system. But I mean, overall, this game is a pit stop, a speed bump on the journey to EDF 2025. This game takes everything that game wanted to do and blew it out of the water. This is Strategic Command Headquarters. Okay, I recorded so much footage for EDF 2025, and not even because it's one of my favorite games ever. I mean, it is, but honestly, I just couldn't stop playing it. So one thing that this game brings to the table that the last one did not have is they have split up, instead of having one main class, into having 4 separate classes: the Ranger, the Fencer, the Wing Diver, and last but not least, my favorite, the Air Raider. So I'm going to kind of go through those right now so you can kind of see what you're getting. So the best place for you to start in this game is probably the Ranger if you have already been playing the last one, only because it's what you're going to be used to. You're a standard Ranger, you have no special movements, just your regular running, diagonal rolling, and you have the widest variety of weapons. Basically assault rifles, shotguns, rocket launchers, sniper rifles, everything like I said in the 2017 portion of the video, with the exception of one thing that he can do that most of the other characters can't, is operate vehicles. Now that's actually a really big deal because there's 2 classes that can pilot the vehicles. Now ride-along vehicles everyone can jump in, but vehicles are a big deal in this game, and I'm going to touch on that a lot more on the Air Raider, trust me. But the ability to pilot the robots and the tanks and the helicopters is a really, really useful thing to do, especially with the versatility this character has. Then you have the Wing Diver. Now the Wing Diver is kind of a crazy character. All of your weapons are energy based, and also you can fly, obviously. So a cool thing is your flight really lets you get in and out of areas very quickly, but because of that advantage, they basically give you a very low threshold of life. Now just like in the last game and in this game, you can really grind up your armor, which is your life, and eventually become, had to have a ton of life, but still, compared to the other classes, you're going to have very little life here. And one huge disadvantage is your weapons and your flight energy are both shared. So if you're in the middle of flying really high and you shoot like a very powerful weapon that drains all your energy, you're going to fall from the sky like a rock. Now, there is no falling damage or anything, but strategically, it could really, really mess you up. Nothing is worse than being in a big pile of spiders and running out of energy and not being able to fly away to escape. That being said, though, because all of your weapons are energy-based and they have the whole risk-reward thing, she really is a glass cannon. You have some of the most powerful, just raw explosion damage weapons in the game. I mean, granted, it will drain all your energy, leaving you extremely exposed, but I mean, if you're really ready to risk it for the biscuit, you can basically nuke a whole crowd of enemies, easy peasy. It's very cool, very neat concept. Just like the other, the Ranger and your Air Raider, you do have 2 weapons, so it's nice to have some variety. But that kind of gets a little bit crazier when you start talking about the Fencer. Now, the Fencer is insane. The Fencer is your tank-type character. You can actually bring in 2 sets of weapons, so a total of 4 weapons. And, wow, you have giant melee weapons. I mean, like a big Buster Sword or a big crazy hammer fist or even just a giant hammer itself. You have shoulder-mounted cannons, missiles that can lock on, giant shotguns, giant Gatling guns, huge flamethrowers. I mean, you have really a lot of versatility with this character. Depending on which weapon you're using, you also get different movement styles. You get boosts, you get large jumping, like boosts in the air. And another thing that's really cool with this character is some of your more high-powered lock-on weapons actually have a tag team effect. Once again, I'm going to be getting to the Air Raider in a second because I am very biased to how much I love the Air Raider. But the Air Raider has certain weapons and certain beacon guns that can provide lock-ons for all the other characters. So you basically shoot a beacon on an enemy, and then you can lock onto that enemy. Now, the cool thing about this is with the Fencer, you have certain high power lock-on weapons that can only be activated with one of these beacons. So the cool thing is you have like usually high damage, really good accuracy, and usually a fast reload time with these. The bad thing is, of course, you have to have an air raider on your team to take advantage of them. So really pushing the couch co-op with this situation. Speaking of co-op, I forgot if I mentioned this or not, but this game has couch co-op, 2 players, but also has online co-op of 4. And what's even better is you can combine the two and have you and a buddy sitting on your couch playing together online with 2 other people. It's just a great situation. So I'm incredibly biased as to why I love the Air Raider the most out of all the classes, and here's why. The Air Raider is a very unique class. You're all about support. Now, you do have some guns. They call them like the limpet launchers, and they're basically these mine guns that are triggered separately. So they don't work like a standard gun, but you also have the ability to summon vehicles, summon airstrikes from either battleships, planes, or from space, including satellite lasers that you can guide around. It's insane. A lot of these things, though, especially the vehicles and the ordnances, all have to be earned in the sense that you get X amount of kills and then all of a sudden you can summon a vehicle or summon something. Now, the vehicles are crazy. You have helicopters, you have rocket trucks, you have tanks, you have mobile suits, but then you also have some specialty vehicles that involve multiple pilots. So you can have this huge mega like Power Ranger style battle mech that has 4 seats, each one performing a different task. You can have a helicopter or a tank where you have separate guns on the side, basically like a mobile war machine. I mean, it is just crazy the amount of stuff you can do with this class, easily making it one of my favorites. As far as support goes, they also have shield barriers, healing guns. Basically, you can shoot an energy barrier on your allies, or you can shoot it onto a vehicle. And they even have like medical vehicles that when you're riding inside of them will recover your health. Usually I like to play like the big attacker, crazy, fight 'em up kind of characters in games like this. But oh my god, like just the ability to summon giant Wrath of God from space, or just a huge mobile suit with missile launchers and lock-on cannons and Gatling guns. It makes the Air Raider so fun. The only thing that's kind of a bummer with the Air Raider is sometimes it's hard to play as the Air Raider solo because your like big heavy hitting stuff does rely on getting kills, and sometimes you can kind of get yourself like caught in a rut, i.e. like you summon a robot, you get all the kills, you run out of ammo with the robot, and then you don't have enough to summon another one, but you're by yourself and maybe your other weapon is not conducive to fighting the ants. It's kind of a challenge. It works really well, obviously, with people, but still, definitely like my favorite class in this game. So this game ramps it up when it comes to enemies. Now you have the same basic enemies as in the last game, as in ships, the robots with the guns, drop ships, spiders, all sorts of stuff like that. But they've added so much more. I mean, they have these little dragons. They have a ton of new bosses that we're definitely going to go over in a second. But they also have like different versions of the robots with more varied weapons. They have giant mobile armors that drop more stuff. I mean, just basically take the last game and then just add so much more. I mean, they really went above and beyond with just like, hey, how are we going to make this more fun? How are we going to make this more varied? And because they added so many levels in this game, they really do a great job of ramping up the things to do. So, I mean, you can see they've added a ton of new robots and crazy bosses and stuff. Like, the one thing that kind of always confused me is, like, how come they never added, like, new, like, insects into this game? You know, that's the big thing, is killing giant ants. You don't see many new insects. And, do you guys hear that? What is that? Holy crap, what the hell? Jesus Christ, there's so many of them! Stop! Freaking stop! You can't do anything! Holy crap, jeez! Yeah, there's totally one new enemy, and that is the bees. The bees are insanely horrible. Imagine everything you hated about the spiders, then give them wings, and instead of like the annoying acid webs, give them huge walls of spears they shoot out. These things are a nightmare, and the only thing worse than this is like the boss version. But speaking of bosses, let's go ahead and talk about those guys for a second. So like the last game, there are a plethora of bosses in this one. One thing that really stands out is the fact that just like the last game, they have versions of the enemies that are just gigantic, like a giant bee, a giant dragon, a giant ant. You know, it's kind of a cool thing because like they're usually surrounded by smaller versions of themselves. Basically, like imagine like a gang, and you know they kind of have like their leader. But I mean, some of these enemies are massive, massive enemies, way bigger than they were in the first game. And one level in particular actually pits you against every single different version of the giant insects slash dragon, because they actually have a huge giant blue dragon as well. But it's really a crazy thing. I mean, like, you really get to put some of those giant vehicles to the test and some of the more powerful weapons. Basically, though, these boss fights really show that you need to play these games co-op, which you want to anyway. It's definitely fun. But on top of that, like, you specifically probably need 4-player co-op, especially for the higher difficulties. All that aside, though, of course this game also has unique bosses, and the one that really stands out to me, and I'm not going to spoil too much, because, you know, you really need to check this game out, is this beach level that has this gigantic mech. It's nothing like anything else in the game. It's not like a big version of something that already exists. It's this huge, standalone, gigantic enemy. I mean, the thing's really crazy, and on the higher difficulties, it basically shoots a seizure-inducing blast of light for all of its attacks. Once again, these games are just insane. Both of them are great, but this one is so cool with the fact that you have the 2-player couch co-op, the 4-player online co-op, and the fact that you can kind of mix and match those. Really makes this a great time. But when you're fighting huge bosses, just over-the-top stuff like this, it really kind of like it's just a fun, chill-at-home game. It's definitely just an awesome, awesome time. I cannot recommend this series enough, and I cannot recommend this game enough. So my final verdict on these two games, as far as which one wins, it's gonna have to be EDF 2025. I mean, there's like way more levels, the class system, just the outrageous amount of expansion they made, paved the way for the future games, the future of the franchise. It's the way to go. That being said, I highly, highly recommend both. These are some of my favorite games. Definitely cult classics. If you've played them, you know what's going on. EDF, EDF, EDF. Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome to another episode of Something Old, Something New, where we play old and new games of similar series or genres and pit them against each other head-to-head style. Today, we're tackling some of Nintendo's largest juggernauts in the form of Mario via the Mario All-Stars collections. Now, there's been many Mario All-Stars collections throughout the years, but right now, we're talking the Mario 3D All-Stars collection, which just released for Switch, and we're pitting it against the Super Mario All-Stars and Mario World set for the Super Nintendo. Which one of these is going to come on top? Let's find out. Now, I want to take a second to explain why I chose the games I chose. As far as Super Mario 3D All-Stars, of course I want to go over this because it's new, and it's brand new, and it's cool as heck. Now, why did I choose this version of Super Mario All-Stars? Well, let me tell you. Original Super Mario All-Stars basically has everything this has except for it's lacking Super Mario World. So everyone knows these games are pretty heavy hitters, so I really wanted to make sure that the 2D scene had as much ammo as it could have to even try to compete. Another thing that may be asked is how come I did not compare this game. Now, this game is literally for the Wii. It's the 25th anniversary edition. It's the same exact thing as regular All-Stars. It's just the 4 games. The thing that was nice, though, is it came with this cool box, came with an art book, a bunch of history, a CD, and a whole bunch of crazy stuff that, quite frankly, this game should have came with. I'm not letting this, like, kind of get in the way of, like, of giving this game a fair shake. But in my opinion, you know, back in the day, this game didn't come with anything because, you know, that was not the norm back in the Super Nintendo time. In the Wii, though, I mean, you can really see that Nintendo went above and beyond and just gave you all sorts of stuff with this collection. The fact that they did not do that for this kind of is unfair. And so really we're comparing games here. We're not comparing what you get with it. We're comparing what is on this cartridge and what is on this cartridge. So that was my decision. I wanted to have the full spectrum of 3D versus the full spectrum of 2D. And that's what we're going with today. So anyway, let's jump into Super Mario All-Stars plus Super Mario World. So you're greeted by possibly one of my favorite intro screens ever for a video game. It's kind of like all the characters are hanging out around the water cooler at work, and it's like, oh, game started, we need to get going now. Like, they're really good friends, but you're just kind of playing a game that they're acting in. Then you jump into the menu itself, really plain, really convenient though. I mean, you go through, it has all the games, Mario Lost Levels 2, Mario 3, and Super Mario World. Another huge thing for this collection is if you click a game, it actually has 4 save slots. And that's a really big deal because when these games were on NES, they didn't have backup batteries in them. So the fact that you can actually save while playing them was a godsend for many. But another neat thing that they show here is they actually do say, hey, the secret, the Lost Levels is unreleased in America. Up until now, the only way you could experience the original Mario trilogy was on the NES, basically with 8-bit graphics, 8-bit sound, everything you're used to seeing. But these games, however, were rebuilt from the ground up to be 16-bit graphics, 16-bit music. I mean, it just was a game changer. For many, it was like just the largest update you could possibly have, and it was totally unexpected at the time. In a way, because of the big upgrade, Miyamoto was kind of the first guy to ever say, hey, we can make an HD remake and definitely make a huge amount of money on it. And although Nintendo seemed to be the trendsetters, every other company obviously followed suit. So now on to the games you actually get with this collection. We're going to start off with Mario 1, a classic. If you haven't played it for whatever reason, this is the grandfather of all platformers. Basic power-ups, you get the mushroom, the fire flower. Basic stuff as far as, you know, there was cheats and warps back then, which is a very cool thing, because, you know, a lot of games didn't have secrets and Easter eggs back in the day. But one thing that really stands out with this game is the updated music. Now, when it comes to boss battles in this game, they're all pretty much the same, very weak. It's Bowser jumping up and down, shooting fireballs, but take a listen to this updated song. I'm sorry, but this thing is an absolute banger. Of course, once you beat him, you go to the end and the classic, oh, your princess is in another castle kind of goes through that motion, and you do this 8 times to beat the game. You know, historically, very important, still very fun, very tight platformer to this day, and a favorite among speedrunners. The next thing we're going to talk about is Mario the Lost Levels. Now, Mario the Lost Levels actually was just Mario 2 in Japan, but they thought it was much too hard for anyone else, so they kept it to themselves. Technically, this was the first time you ever got to play it. I'm not going to go too much into detail with this game, because it is exactly like Mario 1, just much harder. Basically, like, imagine like a really hard ROM hack, and that's what you got. There's a few subtle changes, poison mushrooms here and there, but on the whole, it's basically like Mario 1 Part 2. Then, of course, we go into Super Mario Bros. 2. Now, for those of you who don't know for whatever reason, the reason this game looks so different than a Mario game and plays so different than a Mario game is it's not a Mario game at all. It's actually a reskin of a game called Doki Doki Panic. Whoa, what the hell? What the hell? What is this? Huh. Okay, I get it. Everyone in the world knows that. Well, whatever. If you didn't, then to that one person, you're welcome, I guess. If you have never played this game, though, it's definitely kind of weird. You get to pick from 4 different characters. Mario, who's all around kind of not that special. Toad, who's a little bit quicker. Luigi, who can do this really high fluttery jump. And Peach, which is the only character you should play as, who can basically just hover through the levels. This game is entirely different, obviously, because it's not really a Mario game, But the cool thing is the bosses are, at least different than before. With Mario 1, you basically just run past Bowser, hit the axe, or shoot him with fireballs, and you're done. In this one, the main bosses you're going to be fighting Birdo at the end of almost every stage, where you pick up her eggs, throw it at her face, it opens up the next door. Later in the game, there's other bosses, but it's the same kind of formula. Pretty much hit them 3 times and get it going. Nothing too complicated, but it still is enough to kind of keep you a little bit more challenged than normal. Then you have Mario 3, and that is when stuff started getting real. First huge update you'll see is there's a world map where you can actually go around and click the different levels and do all sorts of different things that are dependent on the world map. There's mushroom houses where you can get items for later on. There's mini games in the form of kind of like a roulette style game to get extra lives, or a card flipping game to get extra items. Also, you can unlock different paths by doing different things in levels, which really makes the overworld kind of like its own cool experience, something that Mario games did not have before. I will say once again though, this game kind of suffers from boring bosses. Just like the previous 2 titles, it's the same scenario: hit the enemy 3 times on the head and move on with your life. With the exception being the final boss, Bowser. That's a little different, but still is not that challenging. As you can see here, they go down very quick. They also have these mini fortress type castles, which aren't quite like the final bosses, but it's the same thing. You're fighting Boom Boom, jump on him 3 times, and you're done. The challenge was definitely in the platforming and the levels, and not so much in the bosses with all these early games. However, there was one enemy that will forever live in infamy to all Mario fans, especially those who played this game growing up, and that is the freaking sun. To those who grew up playing this game, the desert world was one of the best worlds with some of the most iconic levels you can remember. However, this sun was the bane of your existence. This thing was a beast, flying around, chasing you. Every time you think you have his arc figured out, he cuts his way up and kills you real fast. This thing is a nightmare. The sun is the most terrifying thing from this game, and I swear I still have PTSD from this guy. But when you want to talk about bang for your buck, you really get a lot of variety with this game. There's so many different worlds, and they're all amazing. They have an ice world, they have kind of this cloud world, they have the maze world, which is definitely not my favorite, probably not many people's favorite, big small world, which is great. And then of course, when you get to the very end, you kind of go to like almost this kind of hell looking place, and that is Bowser's world. Bowser's whole deal is basically these long lines of tanks and ships and airships. You have to fight your way to the end and fight a boss and slowly move your way through. It's definitely like a gauntlet challenge, and you can warp to get here much earlier, but really this game makes you want to go through and collect as many items as possible so you can be as well prepared as possible for the ending of it. Last but not least on this collection though is Super Mario World. Now this game is probably my first Mario game that I grew up with. I think I played 3 first, but this was my first Mario game, the one that I owned. It was mine, and I got to experience it all for myself for the first time. I didn't have to wait for someone else to pass me the controller because it wasn't my turn, and that is why this game's always going to hold a very special place in my heart. One huge introduction here is, of course, Yoshi. Yoshi being this new rideable character. You can eat shells. Different colored shells give you different abilities, and really just a huge godsend. It's basically a free hit also, which is great. And to the more heartless player, you can actually sacrifice Yoshi to give yourself an extra jump. One thing that also made this game really different are the power-up system. You can actually hold a backup power-up that is up on the top of the screen. You can either switch it out yourself, or if you get hit, it falls down. It's really, really convenient because sometimes you need a cape, but maybe later, and you need a fireballs in the beginning. So it kind of gives you a lot of versatility. Back onto the Yoshis though, there's a whole optional world in the Star World that helps you do all sorts of cool stuff. You can jump around the maps, you can actually go straight to the final boss as early as 10 minutes into the game if you'd like. But another cool thing about this area is they have different colored Yoshis. Now earlier I said that the different shells kind of give you different powers. If you eat a turtle with a blue shell, you get wings. Red shell, when you spit it out, it's fireballs. Yellow shell, it's kind of like an earthquake kind of thing. Well, they actually have different colored Yoshis that you can get in the Star World that line up with these colors, and any shell they eat gives them that power. For instance, and the only one you should use, the blue Yoshi, can eat any shell and basically get wings for the whole level. Well, until you swallow the shell, of course. But you can always grab more shells, and if it's a shell that isn't red, i.e. turning into fireballs, you can always spit the shell out and then eat it back again before you swallow it to keep the flying going. Now this is where the bosses kinda started getting interesting. Let's take this first boss for example. You're on this kind of big teeter-totter seesaw in the lava. Now, you can't hurt the boss himself, but as soon as the seesaw's in his direction, if you jump on him or hit him with fireballs, he starts to slide down. The goal, of course, being to knock him into the lava. Now, that's a lot easier said than done, because when the seesaw comes back, then all of a sudden you're hitting them in the wrong direction. So it's a little bit of timing, a little bit of patience. But it is also a lot better than just jumping on them 3 times. Then you get to the second boss, and I guess I spoke too soon. I don't know what this guy was trying to do, but obviously it didn't work. So I'm not typically trying to show the final bosses on these games, but I really have to show the final boss for this game. He stands out dramatically compared to the others. Up until this point, you haven't faced anything like this before. He throws out these Mecha Koopas, which by the way, you've only just seen in the final castle. And you jump on their head, and you have to launch them up at an angle for them to hit them. This boss has 3 phases, you have to do 2 hits per phase, and in between each phase, Peach jumps out, yells help, and throws you a little mushroom for good luck. Of course, the big scary thing in this one is in phase 3, his happy clown car kinda goes a little bit psychotic on you. The music, of course, very intense the whole time. One of my favorite songs in this game, by the way. And now he's bouncing around quite brutally, also destroying your ammo in the form of the Mecha Koopas, making the whole fight a lot harder. But once you beat him, you get the satisfying end, and it's really quite a cool boss fight. So there's no denying the importance of the Super Mario All-Stars plus Super Mario World collection for the Super Nintendo. It kind of shows that you can not only remake an entire series of a game, but also keep it all on one console, really giving the buyer everything they need for the most up-to-date version of the game. You know, it's kind of funny, a lot of people don't even know that Mario All-Stars plus Mario World is a thing. I mean, everyone knows about Mario All-Stars on the Super Nintendo, but the fact they put it all together in one was kind of a really, really big deal as far as for customer value, something that Nintendo kind of shies away from here and there. But now we're going to talk about when they went outside of their comfort zone, went into the new world, and started talking about 3D. Now, the Mario 3D All-Stars collection has basically the first big 3D games. Now let's see how this thing stacks up. So this game quite possibly may have the fastest startup screen I have seen in a modern game. You basically press A and you get right into it. The main menu is very kind of basic. You get all 3 games, and you also get the 3 soundtracks. Now the soundtracks are kind of cool because you can play all the music from the games, which is a really, really nice addition. And also you can play them and turn off the screen and just kind of jam out if you have your Switch in your backpack or something and have some extra long headphones. The one downside though is, and this is only because this is a modern game, you'd think they'd have some kind of like cool history section or art or anything. I mean, take the Mega Man collections for instance. They have huge art galleries, and the Sonic collections always have commercials and things built in. You'd think for the 35th anniversary they'd maybe have put a little bit more in here. But oh man, you got Mario 64. I'm telling you, like, this is one of my absolute favorite games of all time. And I love the beginning here. It brings back such memories, just messing with Mario's stupid face and making it stretch out all crazy. Mario 64 set the standard for 3D platformers from here on out. I mean, they were the first ones to really do it right, and they might have really been the first ones to legitimately call themselves a 3D platformer. The cool thing about this game is it's set up to where you go into a certain level, and there's 6 stars to get, with a 7th secret one for collecting 100 coins. But basically, you have little missions to do that fully explore each map. This game is not without its downfalls, though. 1 star for every map is fighting a boss, and the same formula, the Mario formula, does apply here, 3 hits, but this being their first take into 3D, the bosses are pretty weak. Usually it's just do one very simple task 3 times, get behind the enemy, jump on the enemy. It's nothing really challenging. I will say, however, that Bowser does tend to be a standout. It's the same concept, get behind him and grab him, but in this one you actually grab him, spin him around, and throw him at a bomb. And then of course further in the game you have to do it more, and also he gets newer abilities, so it kind of builds on itself, but still, overall the bosses are pretty weak. Then again, this is the first 3D Mario game there ever was, so, well, you know, there's definitely some room to grow. There is, however, one thing that this Mario game has that no game could touch at the time. And that's shellboarding, my dudes. I swear, I used to go around like just seeing how much I could do on the shell. I would ignore all objectives. I'd maybe make my own objective, like how many enemies could I kill, or like how many coins could I collect without losing the shell. And like, I mean, to me, this was like the precursor to the Tony Hawk games. This game too has power-ups in the form of hats that you find in the overworld, which is the castle. There's a flying hat, a metal hat, and an invisible hat, and some stages you can combine the metal and invisible hat to do certain puzzles. But still, you know, it's kind of bare bones, but then again, this was the first 3D Mario, so everything in this game is basically landmark. In stark contrast, however, to the awesome desert stages from Mario 3, you have maybe the most boring, terrible desert stage of a game I have ever played. What the f*** am I doing? Actually, to be honest, the only redeeming quality of this desert stage is there's a shell, so you can go shellboarding, once again, kind of giving some enjoyment. But I have never liked this level, and it's just kind of like a sour footnote to me on like an otherwise perfect game. Now, however, we get into some unfamiliar territory for me. I did not have a GameCube or a Wii when they initially came out, so the next 2 games are semi-new to me. I have played them before, but I have not beaten them. That is, however, going to change with this. But I will say that in this version of them, man, they look beautiful. Some things to note with Mario Sunshine is that you don't have the analog controls that the GameCube provides. It's kind of weird that they don't give you the option to hook up a GameCube controller since you can play with a GameCube controller on the Switch. That will forever baffle me, but to circumvent this, they basically made it to where the Z shoulder button and the Z trigger button act as the 2 different functions. One of them lets you shoot while running, and one of them lets you stand still and aim and shoot. Another really weird thing with this collection is you cannot change the inverted look. If you have played the GameCube version, like most have, the trigger is inverted in third person, which really kind of feels natural. In this game, it's not, and there's no way to change that. However, you can go into the Switch's main menu from a console menu and invert the stick like manually, but who wants to do that for one game? This is a very confusing thing for this collection. You know, the more I play it, the more it's like they left out or just kind of rushed it. I mean, definitely grateful they're all here, all these games, but it seems like they really didn't try to do anything cool or add any features. One thing you will notice in all of these 3D games is there is way more narrative here. Now, you know, there's not a sour story in the Mario All-Stars and Super Mario World collection, but all those games kind of have the same story. The princess has been captured, go chase down Bowser, beat him up, or his kids, and save her. And these games are all a little different. I mean, the first game, the princess is captured by Bowser, but you know, you're going through this cool hub world, so it's pretty similar. But in this game, you're going through collecting these shine sprites because this weird paint version of Mario has dirtied up Delfino Island, and the only way to save the island is to get these shine sprites and clean everything up. It's kind of cool, kind of different, because it starts out where, you know, it's not just Bowser taking the princess, it's a whole new threat on an island that you've never been to, and it's a whole new concept. Your main weapon of choice, of course, is the Flood. It's this cool robot that shoots water on your back, water backpack type situation. It's crazy. You can fly with it. You can shoot water to clean up all of the muck and the paint from the bad guys. And it's really a cool new way to get around. I love how, besides the jump dive, which was introduced in Super Mario 64, you now have this hover to really, sustain yourself and really make the platforming even crazier. Now, this is the game to me where the bosses in the Mario franchise really started kind of doing something cool, really cool. I mean, everything else has been a pattern of 3. You get one trick in, but, take this first boss, for instance. You have to fight off all these other little enemies that are bothering you while basically feeding this piranha plant water to make it fall over, and then you smash it. It's like a 5-step thing. It's not just stand behind the enemy and hit it once. It's like a whole big concept, a whole big puzzle, and then as the phases go on, the boss gets more attacks, basically making it cooler and cooler. Every boss in the game is like this, and I mean, they only get more complex. I love playing these games in order, especially with something as large as this collection being like console generation gaps, because you can really see the concepts evolve. You play Mario Sunshine, and it's like, man, I bet you a lot of these ideas were stuff they wanted to do in 64, they just couldn't because they were limited by what they had. Granted, there's the new gimmick of the Flood that gives them all sorts of new options, but it's fantastic to just see these games evolve, especially so rapidly through this collection. Last but not least on the list of games that I did not get to complete in my youth is Super Mario Galaxy. Now, this game probably looks the most beautiful out of all of them. I mean, I know all these games are basically just emulated with a little bit of HD textures, but this looks like it could almost be a Switch game. Cool thing about this game is originally it was on the Wii and it used a lot of the Wii controls. You use basically the motion controls to point out to these star bits and collect them. In this game, you can do that same thing using the Joy-Cons. If you're playing in handheld mode, you can use the touchscreen itself to tap on them. Or if you're like me, playing with a Pro Controller, you actually use the kind of axis part of the Pro Controller to aim at your own TV, and it works the same way as you would with the nunchuck on the Wii. Cool thing is every time your cursor maybe drifts or something, or you kind of need to recalibrate it, all you have to do is press the R button, bam, you're sitting right back in the center of the screen, making it very easy to use. One other way they made this game much more accessible without waggle controls is the spin attack was always used by waggling your nunchuck on the Wii. Now, you can do that if you want to with the Joy-Cons, or you can just press X or Y. Much easier, and it actually kind of gives me hope for maybe a non-waggle control version of Skyward Sword in the future. I think you could probably map it out somehow, similar to how they did with this game. The game itself is fantastic. You basically work on these little kind of round planetoids, because they're not really planets, but you go around and it gets a little disorienting at first, but you kind of crawl around them and go little planetoid to planetoid, making your way through the levels. And just like Mario 64 and Mario Sunshine, each level has its own tasks, giving you reason to revisit them. And as you do more tasks, you basically unlock more of the level. Also making a prominent return are power-ups. Just like in Mario 3 and Super Mario World, the power-ups are like a full suit, like a full transformation for you. A great example here is this bee suit. You can fly around, you can stick to honey and walk on walls with it, but like a real bee, if you touch water or get hit, you lose your power-up. So it's kind of cool. I'm glad they brought that back, and it really makes the versatility fantastic in this game. I will say that so far, out of all the games, this game has the best boss fights. So let's take this first boss, for instance. Side note, I feel terrible for this thing. This thing was just minding its own business, like living in an egg. You smash it, kind of disrupting, half-hatching it. Then you hit its tail into it, finishing hatching it. So now this thing is alive for the first time ever. And what do? You just proceed to kill it. Like, yeah, you're dead now. The boss fight itself is cool, though. I mean, besides the horrible atrocity you're committing, you hit its tail, and then the tail flies up and hits the boss itself. And it's neat because you kind of learned how to do this earlier in the level by whacking these little plants that look very similar to hit a piranha plant to progress in the level. It's kind of cool in that way. And it's definitely graphically gorgeous, and I love how you kind of fight it on the planets that have the gravity effects. Definitely my favorite version of bosses so far in all the Marios that I've played today. On the whole, with the Mario 3D All-Stars though, you do get less games, but they feel very substantial. I mean, you only get 3 games, but each world has 6 or more different things you need to do in them. There may be less levels overall, but the variety kind of makes up for that, giving you a really great amount of versatility and different things to do in these games. Like I said, it would be cool if they had added some of the other features that modern collections have, maybe an art book, or, some cool commercials or something. But the fact that at a bare minimum you get these 3 games, especially if you've never played either of these 3 games, it's an incredible value, and it's definitely worth your time. Well, now comes the tricky part. Which one is better, Mario 3D All-Stars or the Super Nintendo version of Mario All-Stars plus Mario World? I'm not gonna lie, I went back and forth a lot on this one, but even though they're both outstanding, phenomenal collections, and I highly recommend obviously playing both, I'm gonna have to go with the Super Mario World and All-Stars collection on Super Nintendo. Mainly because they just did so much more work on this. They rebuilt the games from the ground up, and they really showed that you can really do a lot of stuff to really tweak things and bring things into a next console generation. Granted, the fact that these are emulated and upscaled is nice, but that's where they kind of stopped it. They don't have it to where you can tweak the controls. They don't have it to where you can, nothing was up-resed or HD remade from the ground up. I'm not saying it's lazy, but I'm just saying in comparison, they put way more work into this and it shows. But hey, luckily for you, if you own a Switch and you have the Nintendo Online service, you don't actually have to choose, because every single one of these games is on the online service, both the 16-bit remakes and the originals on the NES Online service. So, with that being said, what do you guys think? Out of these two, which collection do you think is the best as far as something old, something new? Hey, what's going on, guys, and welcome to another episode of Something Old, Something New, where we compare games of similar genres or styles, or maybe even spiritual successors, to see which games really come out on top. As you guys know, it's the spooky season, and today is Halloween, so we're going to be talking some really cool Halloween games. We're going to... No. So, today we're going to be comparing Predator games. We're going to be comparing Predator 2 on the Sega Genesis and Predator Concrete Jungle for the Xbox. Ah, the Predator franchise, known for... What? I don't know who the hell thought it'd be a great idea to put this Rugrats-ass music in this game, but they need to be fired and then de-skulled. But onto the game itself, you actually play as Danny Glover's character, Lieutenant Harrington from Predator 2, and your job is to go around and save all the hostages while taking out these gang members. If too many hostages die, you get an instant game over, and that number does compound over the levels, so you gotta make sure you're saving them in every single stage. Which is easier said than done, because you're fighting hundreds, if not thousands, of drug-pushing gangbangers non-stop. Speaking of the drugs, though, this game was definitely a product of the 90s, probably around the DARE movement. If you notice, every single time you kill someone, they drop like pills, or alcohol, or a heroin needle, and when you pick it up, it flies to the forefront of the screen and just says, Drug Squad, with a big circle and an X around it. As you go through the levels, you get a ton of weapons, including later on you get Predator weapons, but most of them are really pale in comparison compared to your handgun. I mean, your handgun is basically fully automatic. Here's the handgun versus the machine gun. I mean, yeah, the machine gun's a little faster, but do you really need that much firepower here? So as I'm going through the first level, I've noticed an extreme lack of predators, which kind of makes sense, because in the movie, the whole beginning of the movie has Lieutenant Harrington fighting drug lords, but then I noticed the 3 laser dot reticle from the Predator's plasma caster. Now, if you've seen the Predator movies, you know he's after the people who are the most dangerous threats. He's after people with guns, really violent stuff, because really the Predator's a hunter. He's after the most dangerous game. So when I saw this laser reticle pop up, I instantly thought, oh man, he's gonna try to shoot at me, or he's definitely gonna go for these gang members. Sweet Jesus! What the hell? Why did he go after the tied up guy saying, help me? What in the world are they trying to do with this? I mean, I still don't understand why he's killing hostages, but after you save all the hostages, that starts the end of the level, in which case you need to run to the exit before the Predator does blast you, so at that point, you need to run. So after you're done cleaning up the streets, you're going onto these rooftops, basically doing the same thing though, killing gangsters, saving hostages, watching out for the Predator's laser, blowing up the hostages. But then it's kind of weird, after you beat the roof, you go back to the streets and literally do more of the same. At this point, I actually had let too many hostages die, and I got blasted and got a game over. But that's when the realization hit me. We are playing in the Genesis era, baby. That means there are cheat codes. So, jump onto my old friend, the internet, and look up an awesome cheat for unlimited life and unlimited lives. And it's, hard, man? I don't know, I guess these guys just have too much tood. But anyway, let's jump back into the game. After you're done cleaning the streets for a second time, then you're at a train station where the first time you actually see the Predator. This kind of mirrors the movie in the sense that there was a train scene in a movie, even though the scene took place on a train, not at a train station. But it is kind of cool that, at least in this level, as you're saving hostages, you have like a secondary threat to worry about, being the Predator. Plus, at the end, you kind of have a miniature boss fight where you get to actually fight him. Then you go to the meat locker. Now, if you've seen the movie, this was like Gary Busey's crazy plan where he went in and he knows that the Predator works off of thermal vision, so they go into a cold place and have all these guys in spacesuits. Now, what doesn't make sense is why is this meat locker still filled with the hundreds of drug-pushing gangsters, and why have they tied up the, like, spacemen that you now have to rescue? Plus, you fight predators pretty much all over the place. This level literally is like someone kind of had the movie on in the background and was like, yeah, that's probably about right. But after you beat that level, you know what's next. The streets again, baby! If you're not done cleaning the streets, you're feeling defeat. I don't know, this game obviously is pretty damn lazy, seeing as how 3 of the very few levels are all the same level. That being said, there is one more level left, and this one kind of mixes it up entirely. So the final level is kind of cool, but it's also really quite strange. You're on the Predator ship itself, but I mean, if you've seen the movie, you do go here, except for Lieutenant Harrington chases a Predator here and they have a one-on-one fight. In this level, you're basically going through this maze, to call it anything else would be a lie, and you're fighting hundreds of Predators trying to save more of the spacemen from the meat locker. I don't know, it's like they, had a formula and they said we're gonna stick with it, whatever. But, it really does not make any sense in the context of the movie. But then they kind of throw like another curveball where they kind of try to go back to the movie. They have this giant Predator that comes out, which doesn't represent the Predator from the movie, but whatever, we'll just call it the boss. And you fight it, and it's a very easy boss, and I'm not just saying that because I have unlimited life, I'm saying that because he's a moron and has one pattern. But then after you beat him, they have this crazy thing where like all these Predators pop up around and they hand you the dueling pistol from 1715. Now, this did happen in the movie. In the movie, all these other Predators pop in and they're like, hey, we watched you kill this guy, it was an honorable death, here's like the flintlock pistol from back in the day. So like, I don't know, this whole movie game combination, it just does not make sense. I mean, it's like they wanted to do it, then they didn't do it, and then they finish it, and they did do it. I don't know. I have no idea. But now we're on to Predator Concrete Jungle. Now, this game is a little bit different. This game has you playing as the Predator rather as playing against the Predator. And I'm going to tell you, this game does it right. This game packs so much Predator into it that it actually has 3 separate tutorials. It has one for just movement, it has one for all of your gadgets and weapons, and one for combat. I mean, they have a lot of stuff going on here, and there's definitely a lot to check out while playing as the Predator. As far as weapons go, you have all the classics. The spear gun, the plasma caster, the combi staff, the glaive, the maul, the wrist blades, plus just your raw bare hands and physical strength. As far as combat goes, you can stealth kill many different ways. Barehanded or with your blades, you can just straight jump on people and watch the blood flow out of them like pressurized juice. You can do a lot to people in this game. It's very, very creative. As far as gadgets are concerned, you actually get a ton of gadgets. You can turn invisible like you think you could. You have 3 different kinds of visions: thermal, electric vision, and this other one, which I keep forgetting what it does, but I'm sure it's useful in some sense. Your plasma caster and of course your invisibility run off of power, and when your power runs low, you can switch to the tech vision to follow power lines over to like an electrical panel, which you then punch to recharge your battery. Yeah, you punch your fist straight into the lightning to get more violence. This game is friggin' amazing. It's not just the gameplay and the combat that's amazing, the story itself is actually quite awesome. So it starts out in the 1920s, where you are basically going through and you're doing your first mission as an unblooded predator. Now, you're going through and killing gangsters and all sorts of stuff, but obviously something is not going too well. Well, what ends up happening is you failed your mission, you're not going to make it out, and as the Predator code goes, you cannot let any of your stuff lay behind, so you detonate your bomb and make a huge explosion, kind of covering your tracks. Think the end of the first Predator movie. However, you survive, and not only do you survive, but some of your technology is left behind as well. Now, you get exiled to, like, I guess Scorpion Planet, and that's the last that you think you're going to be seeing of Predator, well, until 100 years later. In that 100 years, on, I guess we're presuming this to be Earth, they have taken your technology and made an advanced culture based entirely off of it. Well, the Predator overlords come back to your Scorpion Planet, where over the last 100 years, you've not only survived, but you have now created a mountain of dead scorpion monsters. Basically, you have to go back to Earth and pretty much right the wrongs you've caused and get some vengeance and reclaim your technology. The first thing you have to do is lay down the law. Basically, you go out and you find some gangsters who are now using your cloaking technology, and you take those guys off the streets, and in classic Predator fashion, throw them on the ground, skin them, and hang them upside down so everyone knows who the hell they're messing with. After you do that, the riot police call out the big guns with these crazy mobile suit Gundam things that kind of remind me of those robots from the Matrix. But man, you know, as violent as these things are, I feel horrible for them, because you don't just kill them. You rip open the cockpit, there's a pilot who can't do anything but scream as you tear his skull straight out of it and beat the machine to death with it. You can't call yourself a self-respected Predator game unless you have some xenomorphs in it. AVP, baby! Cool attention to detail. Unless you're using a blunt weapon, like if you're using a bladed weapon, you will take damage because of their acid blood. So we're gonna go into some spoilers here, some end-game spoilers, only because it does show off one of the coolest things about this game, and that is, so the final boss is like this half-human, half-predator hybrid. Come to find out, he's actually the son of the mob boss from the very beginning of the game. But that's not the crazy thing. The crazy thing is earlier in the game with the xenomorphs, you actually kill this guy's mom, and the mom explains that when he was born weak, and basically like was going to die, and using your Predator technology, you made him strong. So when you kill this guy, you don't just kill him, but use the Predator recorder playback thing to literally play his mom's words of he was weak, without you, he would not be strong. Like, as you're killing him, you're telling him that he would be nothing without you. Yeah, so I'm sorry, Predator Concrete Jungle is like the best game from this franchise that no one has ever played. Like, it is such a hidden gem. Like, this game needs a remake or definitely a sequel, but man, you know, Predator Concrete Jungle, you know, aces all day. So as far as which one comes out on top, it's a no-brainer. Predator Concrete Jungle destroys Predator 2 on the Genesis. Not even close. The sad part is they have not made a Predator game that good since Predator Concrete Jungle. You know, I don't know who's making the Predator games nowadays, but they need to go back to the roots and they need to make a sequel to this thing, because I'm telling you, this is one of the most fun games I've played in a long time. But hey, what do you guys think? You know, do you guys think the Genesis one is better? Or do you think the Xbox PS2 one is better? Let me know down in the comments down below what you think, and I look forward to kind of reading what you guys have to say about it. But hey, you know, have a happy Halloween. Thank you so much for watching the video. If you haven't subscribed, please do. Feel any kind of way, leave a thumbs up or a thumbs down. And, you know, as always, take it easy. So this is the walk of shame with with the fucking predator. Oh my god. Oh, this is fun. we have fun here. Oh man. I'm just gonna start recording because that was good. That was good. Okay, hold on. Do that again. Do that again. But I just want to see. I gotta see.